right, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the SBD Cup recap show for 2025. I've got our fantastic MC, JP Cauchi, joining us. He has not had any dental surgery this time, so he's ready to go. JP, before we get into any sort of recap of the competition, I want to hear your thoughts because you are someone who has been to thousands of powerlifting competitions, nationals, worlds, local meets, team champs. But this was your first SBD Cup. What did you think of the experience? What was it like? What was different? What stood out to you? Run me through some of your highlights from an MC perspective.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily from an MC perspective, but from a powerlifting fan perspective, as you said, been to lots of different meets, even across different federations, different parts of the world. A couple of like easy ones to start off with, just the time of day, especially early in my career. Even now, powerlifting meets start early, man. They start at 9 a.m. You wake up first thing, you go to the meet. This felt a bit more like a sports event, like an actual sports competition where it starts in the afternoon or even in the evening. So that was like a really clear difference, I suppose. It wasn't like the cold first thing in the morning. You know, the volunteers are just having their first cup of coffee and everyone's still half asleep. It was just like, no, it's like this is serious stuff and we're ready to go. In terms of the actual competition, of course, being a small event in terms of like lifter numbers is also a highlight point. Like, again, most local comps might have 40, 50, 60 lifters in a day, and it can sometimes feel like the lifting factory where you're just trying to churn through lifters, um, and you're just trying to be as efficient with time as possible. Whereas with one session, two groups, there's also no time pressure. Like we don't have to finish before a certain time to get the next session in. So, I mean, the spotters were quick because they're just very good at it, but they didn't feel like this need to be so fast. We could just relish in every lift. Um, every record, we could sit on it for a minute. As an MC, I like to talk a lot, obviously. And sometimes in a local comp, I just have to say bars loaded, bars loaded, bars loaded, because we've got to get through it. Whereas at SPD Cup, SPD Australia Cup specifically, when the ref looks at me and says, gives me the nod that the bar is loaded, I can keep yapping for another 15 seconds to kind of pump it up and say, they've missed their second attempt and they need to make this lift. And I can do that for another 10 or 15 seconds and it's not impeding on the day. If anything, it's adding to the day. So that's like another big point. The fact that there's only one session like that. And I mean, that's all. That is all to say, of course, that the quality was just very high. Like literally every freaking second lift felt like it was a record. Um, there was moments where I just would look around and I would think, how many national titles are in this room right now? Like, if you counted every national title in this room, it would be like 50, 60, 70, including some of the volunteers. So it's just a very high standard of lifting.
Yeah, I'm curious for one of your points you mentioned there with that there was a lot of records condensed into a small period of time. Do you feel like this actually kind of like blunts the impact of a record in some degree? Like usually what we see at like a nationals is, we might have a full flight of one weight class and there might be one of them who can break one discipline record or maybe two of them battling it out. But in this instance, like particularly when we got to the last round of deadlifts was like record after record after record. I think the final flight of women's deadlifts was like, there was like 7 record attempts. Do you feel like this kind of actually like numbs us to what it is like to break a record at an event like this?
I don't think so, honestly. I think on the day a little bit, but I don't think so in general because for most powerlifting spectators, most of the powerlifting you will watch will not be that good. And so what it did feel like for the few people that were there, as in for the fortunate people that came, it really felt like a treat. It's like, how often can you, in such a concentrated period of time, watch such high quality lifting where you're literally watching the best Australian performance again and again and again. Like this is the best Australian performance. This is the best Australian performance. This is the best Australian performance. And so, I mean, let's say there was, I don't know how many spectators were there, Alex, maybe 100 or 150 or whatever. For that small group of us that were there, it was like, this is freaking special. And maybe to us, it felt a little bit, you get that blunting effect, but not so much that it's like changing my views on powerlifting. And still, it was still freaking awesome to see. So I can see that as like a minor criticism, but I don't think so because I think especially the true spectator fans that were in the crowd, those that weren't necessarily friends and family of the lifters and were just wanting to watch good lifting, I think they really savored the quality of lifting that they were witnessing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to just have like, okay, this is the 52 kilo national record attempt, and now here's a 57 kilo national record attempt, and now here's a 76 kilo record attempt. And it's just like, it kind of highlights how much quality is lifting in one room at one time. And as you said, like, we don't get that. And that's kind of the whole point of a competition like this. As I alluded to earlier, like with a national event, you may have a full group of one weight class and there's like 3 contenders for first place or 5 or 6 contenders for the podium. But then the rest of them are kind of like filling the space, or they're like filling the numbers in a way. And yeah, events like this, in my mind, really just like bring the best of the best, the cream of the crop, rising to the top, all in one place. And that's kind of how I see it.
I mean, I will say that, like, being the announcer, it is a little bit hard to get everyone pumped and psyched when you like you said, there's like a record after record after record. Like normally, any kind of other event or like a nationals, or like even a local comp when someone's going above the Australian record, when it's like flat and bland for like half an hour and you're just saying, okay, bar is loaded, okay, bar is loaded. But then when someone comes on, you're like, folks, ladies and gentlemen, like we're about to witness the biggest squad in Australian history. G up. Like that's easy. Everyone's like, fuck yeah, like everyone pays attention. Whereas it's very hard to get everyone up back to back. So that was definitely a challenge. But I mean, again, the people that were there wanted to see the lift. So it's not like there were many people there that were only friends with one person and didn't care about everyone else. I think everyone was interested to watch the whole event.
Yeah, and I feel like in a sort of like a nationals context, it's very easy to contextualize what like a good load is, because all you're seeing is maybe it's 83 kilo lifters or 63 kilo lifters, and that's all you're seeing at one point. So like, okay, 300 is like a really good squat for an 83 kilo lifter. Whereas in this instance, it's like we have multiple weight classes represented with both genders represented. It's kind of like recalibrating your standards of what you think good is when each person comes up, which I think can make it a little bit difficult to follow. But it also just, yeah, like I said earlier, it just means that we really do have the best of the best all in one spot.
Yeah, did you find any challenges doing the commentary with Rory? I mean, you guys did a great job, obviously. I did get a chance to listen to it back. Um, did you feel like you get sucked into the moment sometimes and you just wanted to be a spectator, or you felt like you were able to stay professional?
No, I really enjoyed doing it because I love powerlifting, and I feel like a lot of times when we hear powerlifting commentary, they don't do the best job of setting a context. Like oftentimes you watch a powerlifting comment, it's like, okay, here comes this person for this weight. And then that's kind of it. That's kind of all you really hear. Whereas I really enjoyed kind of like contextualizing every lift and making sure that I was, letting the viewers know what this meant, what it was, like who the person was and what it meant for them, and then what it meant in the context of Australia and also the world. And I really, really enjoyed it. I found it only difficult to like reduce the number of words I wanted to say. Like I felt like I could have said a lot more. And when I watch it back, I'm like, I should have said this. I should have added this point in here.
We only got
So
some more
that,
time.
yeah, I feel like if we slowed down the spotting and loading like another 20%, we could have got a little bit more words in and sort of made that storyline even better. But, I really, really enjoyed it. All right, should we get to the results?
Yeah, how do you want to do this?
Let's start with the men, because we always start with the women. Let's make the women the main event at the end.
Well, it
Let's
felt like
start
the
with,
main event in many ways.
yeah, well, it was all time. All right, we'll start with the men. So the winner was Tony Reinmuth, who achieved a total of 926 for a score of 101.76. And in second place was Josh Lanivier, who achieved a total of 896.5 at 120 for a score of 101.19. And in third place for the second year in a row, Kana Chambara, who achieved an 800 kilo total on the dot for a score of 100.997. So that was our podium. Do you think we should go through each of the lifters one by one?
I reckon last place to worst place.
Okay, that's so mean that we have to start with Michael Rand, who I know is listening. I know he's listening. So Rand came into the comp looking for sort of like 880 to 890 in his first meet at 120, which obviously, as we said in the preview show, was going to be a big total PB. And his first two squats were really good. And then unfortunately, he sustained a hip flexor injury on his third attempt at 307.5. Rory and I were pretty sure that he was going to just take token lifts for the rest of the day, but he really gutted it out and he benched with very little load leg drive and did only 5 kilos away from his best bench, benching 195. And then he was able to deadlift 322 and a half, which is still below his best, but with a injury, he really gritted his teeth and finished the day with his head high. And I was very impressed with his ability to do so. I don't think there's a whole lot really to say else about Rand's performance because we didn't really get to see what he was planning on doing because of this injury, which is unfortunate. He was sinking beers after, and he did seem in good spirits. And I said, "Are you okay? Do you think it's bad?" And he said, "Well, I just did 320, so I think it's not that bad."
Yeah, I think it wasn't very clear what happened on that third squat. Like he just like hit the hole and like kind of panicked, and then the spotter said to take it. And yeah, it like you said, it looked like he was going to have to take tokens for the rest of the day. But to his credit, he went on. One interesting thing I want to point out is that he didn't actually get his opening deadlift. He missed his opening deadlift. Went up. Oh no, sorry, repeated the same weight. Got two white lights and then got one red light on his second attempt of his deadlift, and only got three white lights on his third deadlift.
So he added a light for each lift. Went one, two,
Yes,
three.
basically.
Yeah,
I don't know what his opener was. It must have been two. It must have been one white and two reds.
it was. Yeah.
Um, and the main issue that he was having was that his knees weren't straight, according to the referees, which can be a bit of a not necessarily controversial, but it can be a bit of discrepancy between interpretations, I suppose.
Mm. Yeah. It didn't look super convincing. We were a bit surprised that he got reds. It was easy enough. But he went on to make it, and then he went on to add 20 kilos to the opener. We thought that he would actually just do his opener and then call it quits there. So we were like, he's going to be very annoyed that he has to do another deadlift here. But he ended up doing them all. And yeah, like you said, he really gutsed it out, did his best. It's obviously unfortunate to see someone get injured in a competition. I thought it was far worse than it was. So I guess the positive is that he was able to actually finish it, put up something respectable. Still totaled 815, which is by no means weak or bad. And he's qualified for nationals next year as a 120 in his new weight class, and hopefully he can get healthy from here and put up a big total at nationals.
In seventh place, we had Yanni Muselis. I think the big he totaled, what did he total again? 832 and a half.
Yeah, that's right.
And the first thing I wanted to bring up about Yanni was how his squats kind of panned out. He squatted 320 on his second attempt, 3 kilos shy of the Australian record,
Yeah, that's right.
and then went up 12 and a half and missed. So he didn't even want to break the record. He wanted to smash the record by nearly 10 kilos. And he stood up with it, but just got red lights for depth. I think it was 3 red lights if my memory serves. So to me, if someone gets 3 red lights on depth, that says you weren't even close.
Yeah. Rory and I, as it happened, were like, we think he's cut that one higher than the last one. And the refs agreed, which is unfortunate because I think if Yanni had made that squat, he would have been a real chance at the podium. And I'm just curious, as to why they didn't take the record on the second attempt and then something a little bit less on the third, obviously with the incentive that there is prize money for each record. So I'm curious about that. But I think he did have a strong day. I think he was probably roughly as strong as he was the last competition he did, where he did 850 with a couple of misses in there. So like we said in the preview show, Yanni is really, really strong. But there are a couple of, question marks or holes within his execution, which hopefully he can clear up for nationals because, 105 is hotly contested and you need to make every lift if you want to stand on the top of the podium. And yeah, hopefully he can pull it all together. It is worth noting that he actually also missed his deadlift opener. He kind of misgripped it a little bit, got just above the knee, and it kind of flung out of his hand. So, wasn't able to take a jump to his second and get him a bit higher on the overall score, and then ended up missing 22.5 kilos from the second to third jump. So what he totaled at this comp is certainly not reflective of how strong he actually was. But like we said with the previous show, a couple of things to clean up for him.
Yeah, when he missed that opening deadlift, I was a little bit worried because it's very hard to come back when your grip fails. Like when your grip's just not there, it's very, very difficult. So I don't know what he did differently because the second one looked like an opener, as it should have. So I mean, credit to him for coming back. But yeah, a little bit. I'm sure he'd be a little bit disappointed. Only got one deadlift, two squats. Probably not representative of where his actual strength's at.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. I'd love to see him, put it all together, and hopefully he can do that when Nationals comes around. All right, sixth place, Leonardo Suchitra. We finally figured out how to pronounce that. We got it right by the day, which is good. So Leo, again, a little bit disappointing. First squat looked great, looked really standard for Leo, like controlled, composed, smooth. And then he took, a reasonable jump, 15 kilo jump, and he just fell off a cliff. Like it was all of a sudden 10 out of 10 hard. Didn't even come out for his third squat. Had a bit of a hiccup on the second bench, missed the press call, decided to go up anyway, which was, Rory and I were like, okay, I think he has to do this if he wants to stay in the competition. Did it, went up 5 kilos, made it, which was super clutch. And then similarly to what happened on his squats, happened on his deadlifts, where opener was good, second was really, really hard out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere. And then the third wasn't that close.
Yeah, he took a Hail Mary attempt on the third deadlift. For those that remember, he went from 290 to 305.5 for the Australian record. Yeah, I think realistically it wasn't going to be there, but at that point he's not really fighting for any placings, and so you might as well load it up and maybe you just hit the perfect groove. But yeah, a little bit disappointing result for Leo. I think it's a bit deceptive. Like the 74 record's quite good. The 748 is a very high standard record, and so in this format, it's going to be very hard to challenge for that podium. Um, it is his record, and so if he improves 1%, that's all it takes to win this competition nearly. So, it's not totally unreasonable for him to have been more competitive, but when you are putting up, 750 totals at 74, like 10-time bodyweight totals, it's hard to repeat that and to match that, and yeah, and he finished in 6th. Very, like, good result. Not very good result, but a good result objectively, but on a personal level and in the scheme of the context of the competition, yeah, not so great.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, bench press PB, which as a 74 lifter is hard to come by. 5 kilos on his bench press is, for someone at his level, really important to kind of get him sort of catching up to those other 74s. The other few 74s around his area are benching more than 170, so he's kind of catching up there. He just needs to get those lower body lifts back to his best, and yeah, hopefully he can do that by Nationals next year. He did say to me on I think it was Tuesday or Monday that he wasn't sure if he was going to do Nationals next year. So if he is listening, please do it. Please get your shit together and get back to training and get into it, because yeah, we want to see you up there. All right, who's next? Sam Butterworth in fifth position.
And it's worth noting that this bottom 5, so this like 8th, 7th, 6th, sorry, bottom 4, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, Rand, Musella, Sositra, Butterworth. These are the 4 that all went below the Australian record total, all below 96%. I think Sam finished on 96.7%, whereas the top 4 all went above the Australian record. So Sam wasn't really coming to the competition expecting to blow out the Australian total record. He kind of really had his eyes on one main objective, which was the deadlift record. And I think he had a really good crack all day and put up a pretty good result, I think.
Yeah, so he was able to equal his squat PB with 315. He was able to nab a 2.5 bench PB on his second attempt, and then unfortunately miss the 195 third attempt, which was like so close to lockout. I feel like his elbows were like 2 centimeters from being locked. And if you've seen how long Sam's arms are, that's like 99.5% of the way there. And then the deadlift, 350 on the second attempt was really, really good. And then 370 got above the knee, pretty close to lockout, and then flung out of his hands. I'm not sure if he missed it on grip or whether it was, not quite going to be locked out anyway, but it was quite close. And that 370 would have been the biggest deadlift in Australian history, which was it was cool to see someone attempt that much. Um, and it was certainly closer than the last two attempts that he's missed at his last couple of competitions. So he's on his way to sort of that 370 in competition. Yeah, what else can we say about Sam's performance?
I was a little bit surprised that he went for 370, considering the Australian record is 363. Admittedly, as someone who has broken records in the past, Alex,
Have you?
if you're breaking if you're breaking someone else's record, then the half kilo is very obvious. If you're pushing your limits and you're going for it, then yeah, you go the half kilo. There have been instances where I'm breaking my own record and it feels like I don't want to break it by half a kilo. I want to actually prove to myself the improvement and go 2.5 or 5. And so I can kind of understand it from that point of view that he wouldn't want to go. And for context for listeners, the Australian record's 363 and his third attempt was 370. I didn't have a lot of hope that 370 was going to be there after the 350. I would have thought either 363 and a half or maybe 365. But yeah, just curious as to where the 370 came from. Maybe that's just been a lifetime goal, 8 plates.
It's
7 plates.
it's a round number, which we like, and I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. I love round numbers.
I love how 370 is a round number. I guess it's rounded in plates. 7 plates clean.
Well, there's a zero on the end.
Yeah, I guess so. In my head, round is like round to the nearest 100, like 400, 300.
Yeah, true. Well, hopefully Sam attempts 400 soon.
Yeah, well, maybe that's the petition. Sam, put 400 on the bar.
Yeah,
It'll happen at Nationals, folks.
that would have been a fun thing to watch him try and pull 400. All right, fourth place.
The top 4 all broke the Australian record total.
Yep. So Kevin Lai was our sort of like injury replacement at the end of the week, at the week before the competition. Signed up for the comp like 10 days out and was competing in a new weight class in the 93 kilo class. Weighed in at 91.9. I think I said this to you during the preview. I reckon he's going to weigh in real heavy. Wasn't even close to the 83s, which first of all is awesome. I love it. And I think he surely has to feel like he's got a new home here in the 93.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a bit of a wild card. Like as you said, he only got the call up very late, 2 weeks out. Never competed in this weight class.
So for context for the listeners, he actually was invited initially.
Okay.
He just became a new dad, and obviously his wife was pregnant, and he was prepping for Worlds. So he said, you know what, I'm going to just take my foot off the gas for lining up for competitions. I'm not sure what my life's going to look like, with a new baby. So I'm going to say no to the competition. And then his training was just rolling along. Like he was just looking so strong. And then we had a couple of people drop out quite close to the competition. So I just sent him a message and I'm like, mate, you're looking really strong. Like, do you want to just come and do it? And he was like, yeah, sweet, let's go. So obviously he lives in Sydney, so he didn't have to travel or anything. He didn't have to book any flights, which helped. But yeah, new weight class for Kevin, and he was able to break the Australian record total in his first competition as a 93 with only a few months of filling it out because, as I said before, he competed at Worlds in June. So only 4 months after his competition in June, I think he totaled 772.5. So he's plus 40 on top of that in a few months after, just deciding to go up. Actually, he probably hadn't even decided to go up. It was like just a timing thing, like, oh, I'm not going to make 83. Let's just do this one where I'm at. But yeah, I'd love to see him commit to 93, fill it out, and sort of continue raising the standard in that weight class because that's a really stacked weight class as it is with Jonesy, Takua, Simon Shahade, Jonathan Caruso on his way up, and Nathan Tanis, who's going up from 83 to 93. 6 contenders for gold medal next year at Nationals, which is sick.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin was the lifter. I mean, if I could give an award for who I was most impressed by on the men's side, I would say Kevin. I didn't really know a lot about him before. I mean, I saw him lift at Worlds, but before that, didn't really know much about him. But seeing him on the platform, he was just a pro. Like, lifts so nice, excellent technique, great execution, good attempt selection. And as you said, he's found a new home in this 93 class. So I hope he stays because when you haven't filled out the weight class, when you haven't had the time to put on the muscle in that class, like he hasn't put on 8 kilos of muscle since Worlds. He's put on 8 kilos of weight, but not of muscle. When he has the time to put on 8 kilos of muscle, when he actually, understands his body at this weight, like, and that record that he broke, that total record that he broke, there wasn't a week record. You know, that's Adam Jones's record. That's one of Australia's best lifters' record. It's a very high standard, and so for him to casually break Adam Jones's 93 kilo record with 2 weeks' notice, the first time in a weight class, like, yeah, I was just so impressed with him.
Yeah, what a performance from Kevin. And I think it is worth noting that the difference between the 83 record and the 93 record now is only 12 and a half kilos, which I think makes the 93 a little bit more attractive for anyone who's kind of knocking on that door, just with the extra weight you can gain and build into that class. I think with all the names I mentioned earlier, we'll probably see something close to 850 next year. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those guys could get, knocking on the door of 850, which is sick.
And he was also in the running for a podium place when he made that third deadlift of 330. I think that put him into third place at the time, or second
Yeah,
place
he
at the
was.
time.
Yep. So he was in third. Yep. Because Kana put himself into second. Kevin put himself into third, and then Josh went after Kevin to put himself into second.
Yeah, I think like this whole top four, they all went 3 out of 3 on their deadlifts, and so I think with every attempt they just kept changing positions. Like I think Kevin's second attempt put him in second temporarily until Tony Reimert did his second. Or I don't know which way the lifting order was, I forget, but it was basically a back and forth. And I mean, if any of those top three boys missed their third deadlifts, Kevin would have been on the podium. So, in some sense, a little bit unfortunate for Kevin that he didn't finish on the podium, but I mean, he should still be very proud of himself because, like I said, I was very impressed.
One more thing on Kevin is that he actually lifted in last year's SBD Cup in the local comp division. So in 1 year, he's gone from, I think he totaled like 707 or 712 and a half, like low 700s as an 83, to now 812 and a half 1 year later, breaking the 93 kilo record in the prime time. Sick story.
That's insane. Maybe we should have the local comp every year, and the winner of the local comp gets auto invited to to the prime time next year, regardless.
Maybe that would be like, they'd be like the biggest fish out of water potentially, or it'd be like Kevin.
You never know. All right, onto the podium.
Yeah, onto the podium. Kana Chambara in third place. So as we mentioned, he did break the Australian record total by 7.5 kilos, which was his own record total that he broke at last year's SBD Cup. So that record stood for a year. Both he and Nathan Tanner's got quite close at nationals this year, but neither of them were able to push it any higher. He had a good day. A little bit of a shaky start. Missed his first squat on depth. It was very easy, so they decided to go up. And it was a 2 red light lift, not a 3 red light lift, which gives you a little bit more hope as a coach when you just stick to the plan. So they he missed 270 on depth. They went to 290. Was pretty good. It wasn't like his best squat. And then they decided to jump plus 15. And on the 305 attempt, kind of just looked very unsettled and unstable. Like the walkout was shaky. The descent was very unstable. He kind of like he was kind of shaking on the way down, and you could tell he wasn't stable enough to really sink it to depth and like actually get all the way down. So he cut it quite high. And I think Rory and I said like on the broadcast, like, oh, he's like really cut that one. And he unfortunately got reds for it. So hopefully we can see Kana actually make a third squat, because he was able to break the total record with a 15 kilo jump that was missed on his second to third squat. So hopefully we can see him, and it is worth mentioning that he has done 300 in the past. So this was only 5 kilos more than what he did at last year's SBD Cup. So I think just fine tuning that attempt selection, making sure that they actually get 3 squats on the board. And perhaps Kana would have won if he made 3 squats. Like even if it was 297.5, like he probably wins, which is certainly worth noting. A little bit greedy on that third squat, but outside of that, really, really flawless day of lifting. Bench 185, which is just 1.5 kilos away from the record. A deadlift 325, which is just 2.5 kilos away from the record. So it was cool to see them pick the right number, because in both instances they were like great selections, and they didn't get like teased by trying to chip the record, like pushing it a little bit too far. Because I think in both instances it would have been just that little 2 or 3 kilo bridge too far.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, like if he got a third squat, like you said, even 297.5, he would have won, because he would have scored 101.9%. So
And he would have been going after Tony, who won. So he would have been able to pick his number.
yeah. I mean, assuming nothing else changes, of course, if he made a 297.5 squat, he would have won. And I will say probably, yeah, maybe a mistake on John's part, which I did point out to him afterwards, or at least shared my opinion because I know I can. My approach as a little practical bit of advice for any coaches out there is that if a lifter gets a good lift, but even gets one red light, that's already a sign that things are cracking. It means that their form is cracking, whether it's a red light for depth or a red light for beating a call or whatever the red light is for on a second attempt. If they get one red light, that's a sign that they're not dialed in. And unless you know them 1,000% and you know that that's just an anomaly, then that's a sign of whatever your plan jump was, maybe scale it back a touch. And so would kind of miss his opener on depth on squat and then missed it. And then his second attempt, he got it, but got two whites. Even if your plan was jump 15, I would have said, let's jump 7.5 or 10 because clearly there are cracks in your lifting right now. And so you do have to accommodate for that. But I mean, other than the squats, like he, turned it around really well, like you said, and he went 6 out of 6 from there. His last deadlift was like right on the money. I think he would have failed 327.5. He deadlifted 325 for the Australian record deadlift and total.
So the deadlift record was 327.5 before, so he would have needed 328 for that.
Right.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, good choice there to not extend that extra 3 kilos because I feel like that would have been too much.
Yeah. I mean, 800 kilo total. Like, I remember the first time an 800 kilo total was lifted by any 83 kilo lifter. So, I mean, he's in very good company to be over 800 at 83. And it's worth pointing out as well that he came second last year. So to come third this year, it's hard because every time you place well, you break records and it makes it harder for you the year after.
He came third last year and he came third
Oh, sorry,
again.
came
So
third last year and third this
yeah,
year.
his trophy's right behind me.
Excellent. Yeah,
um,
so every time you do well in this competition, it just makes it harder for you next year.
yeah, he might have to move weight classes. I think worth noting with the choice to go from 290 to 300 is that we knew the men's scores were going to be just over 100. Like 102, 103 was going to be like the most that anyone could do. So if he was just able to match what he did last time when he did the total record and then capitalize later in the day, that would have been enough. So worth noting in that instance that like sometimes you don't have to push past the PR because you're just competing relative to the rest of the field. And as long as you hold your own, you put yourself in good stead later on.
Very good practical advice there, Alex.
All right, moving on to the top 2. So Josh Lanivia with the only 9 for 9 performance of the meet, which at a meet like this, when there's records, there's risk being taken, going 9 for 9 is very, very difficult. There's pressure on every lift. There's record attempts. Like I said, there's attempts to push people on and off the podium or take someone else's record off them. And, we tend to see these higher pressure lifts leading to more misses. But Josh was the only one in the field who went 9 for 9. He was absolutely flawless. I mean, obviously he went 9 for 9. I don't think he got a single red light the whole day. I think he surpassed sort of my expectations on where he would finish. He didn't surpass my expectations on how much he would total, but I guess baked into that is me expecting or at least predicting the best from everyone else as well. So, a couple kilos off here or there from the other lifters, and Josh just had the day that we knew he could have, and he was kind of the only one who really had the day who we knew he could have, and yeah, he was outstanding.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that his 9 out of 9 day wasn't a soft 9 out of 9. It's not that hard to go 9 out of 9 in a local meet where you're playing it safe, you're building a total, you've got nationals in 4 months, and you're just trying to get on the board. But he beat his personal best in all 3 lifts. It's like literally the textbook best day ever. Personal best in every lift, personal best in total, obviously 9 out of 9, and it just so happens that those personal bests were also the Australian records, and so he broke the Australian record on the squat, broke the Australian record on the bench press, broke the Australian record in the total.
Yeah, breaking his own squat record, his own bench record, his own total record, and his final deadlift, like we alluded to earlier. I think a 5 kilo PB, or maybe a little bit more than that. 7.5 kilo PB for second place overall to push Kevin Lai off the podium and get himself a good payday.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been my second pick for most impressive lifter on the day. I haven't really, again, a bit like Kevin, I haven't really seen much of Josh Lanivia's lifting in person before or ever really, and he just looked like a pro. I know he shared a thing on social media on his Instagram that his prep didn't go perfectly. He missed some of those numbers in the gym prior, but came in clutch, executed like a champ, and had the best day ever.
Both of those lifters train out of Adonis Campbelltown. with Charles Kafusi. Maybe they could teach Charles a thing or two about execution.
Yeah, I mean, Charles is pretty good. He had a pretty good run without missing a squat
Yeah, that's true.
until a certain
All
day.
right.
It's worth noting, by the way, that Josh and Lanivia absolutely knocking on the door of a 900 kilo total. Very sad that
Yeah.
it wasn't this weekend, but it'll come very soon.
Yeah, 896.5. So he would have needed the 350 to give him 901.5. But yeah, I think by the time Nationals rolls around, hopefully he can get some of those niggles sorted. I know he had a bit of a sore elbow. I know he had a bit of a sore knee in the prep, and he was still able to, knock on the door of 900, hit the biggest ever total in 120, go 9 for 9, break his own squat, bench, and total records, and finish second overall. Just a fucking awesome performance from Josh.
Now, speaking about 900 kilo totals,
Yes, our first place. I think who we both considered to be the favorite, or at least I considered to be the favorite. Actually, I think you had him third in your
yeah, I'm on the
predictions.
podium.
Tony Reimers, 926 kilo total, 101.76% of the record, and first place in the SBD Cup 2025. I think obviously the moment that he's going to be known for is the 406 squat, which he squatted 405 in June. This competition he squatted 406. I think this one was like notably better.
Yeah.
I think there's been like quite a bit of improvement in that 4-month period, which is so cool to see. And seeing the crowd hype up, seeing him hype the crowd up, seeing you hype the crowd up, and then seeing him execute the way he did for that 406, walking it out, the plates are flapping. It's just there's nothing cooler. I've said this so many times, but there's nothing cooler in powerlifting than the biggest person doing the biggest squat. And the spotters were very relieved that he made it.
Yeah, understandably, they were hyped up. They were snorting ammonia. They were giving each other back slaps. They were ready to go. Squatted 406. He squatted 405 in June, as you mentioned, and the 406 that he did looked 10 kilos better. And in the post squat interview, he said to me that he felt like he was good for 415 after having done the 406. The challenging part is it's hard to gauge that in your opener and second because nobody has experience seeing lifts that big and knowing how much is left. Alex, you and I pride ourselves on our ability to pick how many kilos are left, but we're very good at that when people are lifting 180 kilos because we've seen that 1,000 times. But I've seen people squat over 400 times. Yeah, not as many times. And so afterwards, he was confident that he could have done 415, and I trust his judgment on that. On his bench
Rory
press,
even said he said, I have no idea how much he could have squatted today.
yeah, it's all like fake numbers. It's all monopoly money. I don't know. I don't know what these things mean, man. It's
doesn't seem real.
Infinite. Just, I don't know. Put more on. It's like, what's one more plate? Just put another one on. Like there's heaps on there anyway.
Yeah, so that was obviously the highlight for Tony, and maybe for the whole competition. Like maybe the most hype lift of the whole competition. And he went on to bench 200, and he actually just beat the press call on the 210, which moved well. Like he gassed it. It had some good momentum. I don't know if how much slower it would have been had he waited for that press call, but I think there was definitely room in that as well. So if he can, maybe if he can squat 415, like pick up what he can actually squat, and then lock in 3 benches at Nationals. He said to you he hopes to be back up to 960 or so by Nationals. And it felt like he was playing it a little bit safe on deadlift at the end there, taking quite small jumps, 300 to 312.5 to 320, and they all seemed reasonably comfortable. That seems like there's a lot more in the tank for Tony.
Yeah, it felt like it was clear to me that the coaches had done the math and figured if we total whatever they did, 926, if they deadlift 320, that should be enough to hold everyone off who's following them, which is one of the benefits of having such a big subtotal. You mentioned that at Nationals, he's going to be pushing towards 950, 960. Don't forget that in the what did we call it? The pre-game show that we did last week, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, the preview?
The preview. I don't know. My mind just went blank. I mentioned as well that, Tony's best bench is 248. And I know that was a while ago. Like that was like 6-7 years ago. And he's had a shoulder injury for a long time. But that tells you that he's physically capable of 250 kilo bench press. Like he can bench press that much if he sorts out his shoulder issue. Now, he may never. Many people, once they get injured like that, they can never get back up there. And I mean, it's been a long-term injury, so that doesn't bode so well. But he's physically capable of benching 230, 240. And so if he just adds 40 kilos to his bench press, he's knocking on the door of 1,000 kilos all of a sudden.
Yeah, and like I said, the deadlifts were conservative. They were kind of just, hey, let's just do enough to win, and then we'll leave it there. It is worth noting Josh would have needed 352.5 to push Tony out of first. And I'm sure they looked at that, and I'm sure maybe if it was 350, they would have gone for it, and that would have been cool to see. But yeah, I think they picked the right number for Tony just to push everyone a little bit too far and make sure that because no one actually even attempted to push him off the podium once he was in first after his third pull. He stayed there.
All right, Alex, I've got a little bit of trivia for you very quickly before we move on to the women's.
Okay, hit me.
All right, you have to promise us that you haven't checked the score sheet. You're not looking at the score sheet now. All right, on the men's side, on GL points, who would you expect to be the best lifter?
I think Kana.
You're good. You're correct. Yeah, definitely. It was Kana. Would have been best male lifter. He scored 111 GL points with his 800 at 80, whatever he was, 82 and a half.
Yep.
And who do you reckon was the worst lifter on the men's side by GL points?
I'm going to go with Tony.
Yeah, you nailed it. Tony Reinmuth was actually the worst lifter on GL points, which is actually insane to me, that can be the case. But I mean, it's just the format of the event.
It is funny that the GL formula seems to favor super heavyweight women.
Okay.
But not super heavyweight men. I know that Jesus is quite below some of the lighter weight males, and you'll see Sunita and Brittany and Natalie Lalai, I think Lucy was the number one Australian until Abby came and beat her last weekend. So yeah, it seems like the super heavyweight females get a bump in the GL formula, and the super heavyweight males get a bit of a downturn.
Potentially, man, you're just so good at powerlifting. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, that was actually, I don't even think it's on the score sheet. Yeah, it's not even on this.
No, it's not.
It's just got percentage score.
I did some research, man.
Nice. All right, moving on to the women's side. Now, we had first place, Abby Wallace, 114.98%, which is just not a real number. Second place, Brittany Romas, 106.46%. And third place, Aisling Otway, 103.73%. That was our podium. So we'll do what we did with the men, and we'll go from the bottom to the top. So Ainsley Jones, 9th place. Similar to Kevin Lai, she had the call up 10 days out. This was her first meet in 47s. Prior to this competition, she was a challenger to sort of that second place in the 52 below Liz. And there was kind of a pool of, Kate Nax and Sin sort of battling it out for second. She actually bombed at Nationals, decided to go down to 47, missed weight 2 weeks before this comp, got the call up, made weight 47.0 on the nose, and she had herself a good day. Debut comp at 47, total 373, squatted 145.5, which took over Vicky K's squat record, went 3 for 3 on the bench, went 2 for 3 in the deadlift, just missing a 5 kilo jump on her third attempt.
2 for 3 on the bench, right? You said 3 for 3, I think.
Oh, did she miss 80?
She missed 80,
I thought she made it. Oh, I thought she made it. My apologies. So on paper, a 6 for 9 day for Ainsley, but really a 7 for 9 day because she missed her first squat on beating the squat command. She just walked it out and went. Didn't wait. But they still took a 10 kilo jump and then an 8 kilo jump to take that record. So that was definitely the highlight for her for the day, coming in and getting her name on another Australian squat record. She has previously held the 52 kilo squat record for about a year at 148, which no one was able to beat at last year's SBD Cup, but Liz was able to beat it at Nationals. So yeah, now she's got her name back in the record books. And yeah, anything else to say about Ainsley's performance?
I was a little bit surprised that they went up after that first squat. One of her main targets for the competition was to qualify for Nationals. And, that's why they tried to compete 2 weeks ago, was to hit the QT, which it's not a very high QT. I mean, relative to her ability, obviously. And so when that's your target and you miss your opening squat, it's like the only way you don't hit the QT is if you bomb, right? Like that's
Yeah.
literally the only way. And of course, 137.5 is still, in hindsight, very much within reason. But I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of an anxious coach and I would probably say, look, priority number one is you got to hit your lifts. So let's just repeat.
Yeah, I think when you're in a environment like this where it's the only chance to break a record
True.
outside of nationals, it's like almost too good of an opportunity to pass up. And I think she was also still signed up for the competition next weekend at Alpha Athletes. So perhaps they were, if she did bomb or if she missed weight,
Make
they were
weight
just going
again.
to run it back again. So like I think that was an option too, because there's still 3 or 4 more weeks to qualify for next year's national. So perhaps that was the plan, the backup plan, the backup plan, the third backup plan.
Plan C. That's what I always rely on, plan C.
Yeah. So Ainsley had a good day. Obviously, first hit out as a 47, and it'll be cool to see her at nationals in that weight class. She's actually locked into that weight class now because she didn't get a total at nationals at 52. So the only class she's qualified in is 47. So she will be running it back in Feb.
So 9th place, Ainsley Jones. 8th place, a familiar face, Bethany Parker.
Yeah, so Beth had a good day. She was a little bit below her best ever, but she seemed quite happy with her performance, which she made a big story about. She made a Instagram post about how this is where she is in her career and she's kind of on her way back to being to her best. And she was a little bit disappointed that people were like, "Oh, wait till she's healthy," or wait till she's firing all cylinders again. But I think that competition in her eyes was reflective of where she was at, and she was happy to use that as a kind of like a yardstick to say, "Here's where I'm at, and this isn't the best that I've been, but it is a reflection of where I'm headed, which is back to my best. Hopefully by nationals next year." With all that said, she was able to squat 185, which is just 2.5 kilos off what she did last year at the same event. She was able to get her bench press record back, benching 129, and it did have some room. I think she probably could have done like 132.5 or thereabouts, which is cool. She deadlifted 210, which I believe is, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 kilos off her best deadlifting competition. Is that right? Can you double check that? Fact checking live. And she did go for the deadlift record on her final attempt of 220.5, which was pretty close. It was a fucking good effort, but unfortunately a little bit heavy on the day. So she finished with a total of 524, I believe. Is that right?
524. Sorry, it took me a second. I got it here.
Yep. So
Yes, I do have it all here.
so she finished with a total of 524, which is just I believe 6.5 below her best, which was from last year's SBD Cup. So she's not far off her best, and I think she was really happy with her performance and kind of a good measure of where she's at the moment.
Alex, her best deadlift was in the second attempt at SBD Cup last year. Can you remember what her second attempt deadlift was last year?
Yeah, it was 215.
Did you remember that, or have you seen it now?
I haven't seen it. Promise.
But now that I've prompted you, remembered it.
Yeah, she missed 227 on third.
Yeah, nailed it.
Okay.
God, you're good.
Yeah. Anything else to say about Beth?
Pretty good result, I would say, on her end. I mean, like you said, just getting back up to full health. It's obviously a good sign that she's breaking the Australian bench record. And even that, can you believe, is still a little bit below her best. Her best is a bit above that. I know she's benched 135 in the gym with a pretty decent pause. And so, yeah, positive signs. She's a veteran. She doesn't have that youthful enthusiasm that a lot of the other lifters have. Ironically, she's as youthful as the rest of them, but she's been in the sport for 11 years. And so when you've been in the sport for 11 years, you don't have that like total obsession and excitement for every session, every block. But it is good to see her kind of coming back from maybe, a down spell in the last few years to, moving towards her best again.
Yeah, she'll be back to her best next year. I'm sure of it. All right, moving on. Isabel von Weissenberg, who also competed in the 84 class, finishing a couple kilos ahead of Bethany. She went 2 for 3 on the squat and attempted to break Yanni Zhao's squat record of 210.5, attempting 211. and unfortunately got called 2-1 on depth, which I thought it could have gone either way. Like I wouldn't say it was a bad call. I wouldn't say it was like definitely the right call either. Like it was one of those ones that could just go either way. So maybe a little bit unlucky there for Izzy. What do you think about that squat attempt?
Yeah, totally agree. Like, could have gone either way. It would have been a personal best for her as well because her best is 206. Yeah, very much 50-50. I mean, she has the physical strength. I think if you had 100 refs there, she would have gotten 55 reds and 45 whites. So it just happened that the three refs of the three there, she had 2 reds. So it was very, very close.
Yeah. Sorry. Also worth noting on Izzy is that she decided like 2 hours or so before weigh-in that she wasn't going to continue her cut and she wanted to eat. So she decided to go to 84 just a few hours before weigh-in, which it seemed like whatever she did didn't affect her strength. Like she seemed as strong, if not stronger, than all of the training that she's been posting. So perhaps a good idea to do that. I would love to see her in the 76 at some point, whether that's next year or whether that's whenever that is. But yeah, she did really well. She definitely held her own. And, if she had gotten that squat, she would have been a few places up, but not quite above that 100% mark.
I will say she also unofficially won the grind of the day, number one grinder, if we're giving away that award, with her last deadlift coming in clutch, Australian record. Kind of forced to do it because Nicola Orr had already attempted 225 and missed, even though the record prior was 220. And Beth Parker
219,
missed.
yep.
Yeah, and Beth Parker missed 220.5. So in some way forced to do 225, but I'm sure that was a decision that they're happy to do, 4 red plates. And it was freaking hard, but it was really, really well executed. Maybe, one of the best grinds I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, the coach came in to change down to, I think they wanted to do 220.5, which is the lowest number they could do to break the record. But because of Nicola attempting 225 already, she had to attempt the same weight. And it's funny, if they didn't have the lot number advantage, she would have actually had to do more. So they kind of got a little bit lucky in that respect. But yeah, 225 was Izzy's third attempt. And like you said, grind of the day, awesome fight. Just held her position and just kept going. 3 white lights, fantastic lifting, like one of the highlights of the day. And I believe that was the last female deadlift attempt of the day. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
Finishing off with the Australian record in the 84 kilo class. And that record previously, I believe, belonged to Nicola Orr, who is our next lifter.
Mm-hmm. So Nicola finishing 6th. Again, I think she was like half a kilo. Oh, I think they actually finished on the same total. Yeah, they did. They finished on the same total of 527.5. So Nicola squatting 197.5, which was a 5 kilo PB. She missed her third bench on here. I can't remember that. Do you remember that third bench?
I think it just wasn't strong enough. It's from my memory, yeah.
Because I remember her second being quite good, and I remember being confident that she would get that 115, but unfortunately not quite on the day. Deadlift, she went 2 for 3, going 215, then taking her own record or chipping her own record, taking 220. Previous record was 219. And then she had a crack at 225, which I must say was such a good effort. One of the best fights of the day, and unfortunately, maybe a kilo too much.
Alex, if the previous record's 219 and then you do 220, are you still chipping the record? Like, does that count as a chipping of a record?
I mean, 1 kilo is a chip, right? Not a 0.5. It's not the smallest chip. It's a chip.
But there are no chips on the bar. Yeah, and it's not the smallest chip. Like, she could have done 219.5.
She could have.
Would have been very annoying, though.
That would have been lame, though.
Yeah.
220 was the right choice.
Would imagine going for the record and deadlifting like 199.5 or like 299.5.
I remember Tiffany Chapon had a third bench press attempt of 99.5 one time to chip her. Not sure if it was chipping her own record or something. It's like, come on, man. Just do 100.
Put a little bit of extra chalk on the bar.
Yeah. Anyway, so Nicola 225 attempt was super, super close. Like, such a good effort from her, and unfortunately just a little bit too heavy. But she was able to walk away with a PB total, PB squat, and I think she was pretty happy with her day overall.
Yeah, I was very impressed with her. I mean, Again, I haven't seen a lot of her lifting. She's from Tasmania, from Catalyst Strength, and she really like fired up for every lift. Every lift looks so hard. There are some lifters where they just make everything look easy. I feel like Kevin Ly's a little bit like that. Um, Michael Rand is a little bit like that sometimes. They just make things look easy. This isn't a compliment or a not to be taken offensively, but she makes everything look hard in a way, like in the sense that she's really fucking giving it her all. Like there's no doubt that she was really giving it her all on every attempt. So I was actually very impressed by that. And I made that comment a couple of times to couple of different people that I was very impressed with watching her lift. Um, and yeah, I mean, overall, I would say a relatively good result.
I think a good way to put it is like it looks like she's in fifth gear on her opener, and then she just finds another gear on the second attempt, and then you're like, oh, that's got to be like surely that's it, and then she just finds another one on the third attempt, and it's like it's so hard to back up a really really hard lift and do it again, and then do it again, and then do it on bench, and then do it on deadlifts, and like yeah, really really impressive the amount of like mental strength that it takes to get yourself to that place to try so hard so many times in a row. Like I know personally, if I have one hard squat or one hard deadlift, like I'm cooked. I'm done for the day. You can stick a fork in me. But I'm
Time
obviously
for a
not.
taper and a
I'm not.
steak.
I'm not the elite athlete that Nicola Orr is. So shout out to her.
Yep, yep, great lifting. All right, in fifth place, we have another Tasmanian in Sophie Dobson, lifting for the first time in the 52 kilo category.
So Sophie looked good most of the day. Came out quite shaky on squats actually. Not sure if it was nerves or whether it was like, being lighter than she's used to lifting and kind of being just a little bit unstable and a bit smaller. I know that when I've done cuts in the past, I feel particularly on squats, I feel just like
Empty.
empty is the best word. You just feel like where am I? Like where
Like
am I
hollow.
going?
You got
Yeah.
nothing inside you.
Yeah, and she looked a little bit like that, but then she added 5 kilos to her second. She added 5 kilos to her third. Unfortunately, missing 137.5 on depth. The strength was there for that, and even with that 5 kilo miss, when it got to deadlifts, she was still a chance at that 100%. So she's definitely a contender at 52 if she can put together a day. Obviously, moving on to bench press, she was able to chip the bench press record on her second attempt, doing 91.5, which took Vicky K's record from last year. And then she added 3.5 kilos to that on her third attempt. And when they put that number in, I was like, that is risky. But we spoke to Jack about it at the pub after, and he said, he thought she kind of misgrooved her second one, and they kind of went for the highest number that they thought she could get. Turned out to be exactly the right number, and she was able to put 4 kilos on the Australian bench record at 52. That's like 5% of the record. Like that's a lot. That's really impressive. And then moving on to deadlifts, she opened at 170, and then they jumped straight to that Australian record attempt of 185.5 to chip Sinew Liang's 185. And unfortunately, getting, I think, 3 red lights in both instances for a soft lockout. I must say I definitely agree with the referee's choice to give the 3 white lights in that instance. She just looked a little bit soft through the knees, soft through the shoulders, and hopefully she can clean that up because, like I said before, she's certainly a contender at 52. The weight class I think suited her, and particularly if Abby decides to stay in 57, it would make sense for Sophie to have a crack at trying to win nationals at 52.
Yeah, maybe a little bit unlucky to have not gotten that deadlift both times because they're both of them really close. I mean, I have to agree with you that they weren't uh, good in my eyes either. But when you're getting, I think she did get 1 white light on those deadlifts, and so if you're getting 1 white light, you're very close. And so, I mean, she added 15 kilos to her total. She would have been on. I mean, don't quote me on this, but she would have been maybe not quite on the podium, but very very close. So, first time in the 52 kilo class, clearly has a lot of potential there. What she's going to do in the future, I'm not so sure. But yeah, awesome lifting. And I think, the highlight easily was the bench because girls' bench is hard. I mean, all bench is hard. My bench is hard. Our bench is hard. So to add 3.5 on that second attempt and then nail it, that was really, really good execution on her behalf.
Yeah, worth noting that Sophie competed earlier this year at nationals at 63, and she benched 97.5. She then went down to 57, and she benched 92.5. So she actually lost 5 kilos on her bench, dropping a weight class. But now she's gone down to 52. She actually added weight to her bench press. So she's gone down 2 weight classes and somehow only lost 2.5 kilos to her bench press, which is really impressive. And yeah, if you give her that third squat on depth and you give her one of those 2 deadlifts, she's at 413, which is 5 kilos away from the Australian record total. So not quite on the podium, but would have been knocking on the door for the total record on her final deadlift. So it may look like on paper she's quite far away, but she's actually quite close.
And we had 4 girls go 100% or score at least 100%. And in fact, 101% at least. And in 4th place was Hannah Altman.
Yeah, so Hannah opened off her day really well, chipping Kelly Bastow's squat record on her second attempt, doing 194. Aislinn Otway, who finished third, who we'll get to shortly, ended up breaking that on her second, and then Hannah went for 197.5, stood up with it, but was given red lights for depth. I thought that one was quite high. I thought the first 2 were like borderline, and the second one you could tell she cut it a little bit higher. So she didn't get credit for that third attempt. She went on to bench 115.5, which chipped her own record, which was then broken by Brittany Romas, who finished second. So Hannah started off her squat by getting a record, losing it, getting a bench record, losing it, and then she actually came out and missed her opening deadlift. It's just a little bit sloppy at lockout, not quite having those shoulders and knees perfectly locked. Came back and repeated it, added 12.5 to that, and actually put herself on the podium with her third deadlift, and then was knocked off the podium on her final deadlift.
By both of the girls that took her records earlier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Hannah was like, she had a really, really great day herself. I know she was really happy with how she did. She's added a lot to her total this year. I think I mentioned in the preview show that, she was up around that 470, 480 mark for a while and was kind of just stuck there. And now she seems to have broken right through that barrier, totaling over 500 for the first time. I think she did 502. Can you just double check that?
Oh, yeah. Hannah Altman was on 502. Yeah, 502.0 specifically, not 502.5.
Yeah, so a 502 total, which I believe is a 22.0 kilo PB on the total for Hannah. Also with, a missed opening deadlift and a missed squat on depth. So, when you miss on depth, that you're even closer than if you just outright miss, because it's just, a matter of centimeters. So, yeah, I believe Hannah will be sort of up in the 520s, 530s in no time. Although she has alluded to potentially going back down to the 69 class, she has qualified for nationals in both weight classes, so she has the choice to decide what she wants to do. It seems like a lot of the lifters are flocking to 76, and the 69 is, somewhat open now with Brittany leaving. So perhaps that's the right move for Hannah. We'll have to wait and see what she decides to do. But yeah, awesome performance from Hannah, and 4th place overall. And also her first time over 100 GL.
Hell yeah, that's worth celebrating. Awesome effort. Okay, 3rd place, our podium, Aislinn.
Yeah, so Aislinn Otway, aforementioned, got the 76 squat record on her second attempt, 200.5, and then added another 5 to that, 205.5. So that record went up by 12.0 kilos throughout the day, which is, a big increase and super cool to see the 76 class being elevated. And it's only 5 kilos away from the 84 kilo squat record as well. So very, very strong squatting from Aislinn on the day. She benched 95, which she did on her third attempt after missing on her second attempt. That was like a epic misgroove. Like she pressed it like almost towards her knees as instead of back towards her shoulders. And then she was able to rectify that on the third, and it did look like she had a little bit more in the tank. So I think they were probably planning for, 97.5 or maybe 100 if she was really on. And it looked like that was definitely possible with how the third attempt moved. So hopefully she can clean that up and get towards 100 at her next comp. She's actually competing at Oceanias in 3 weeks, which is nuts. Built different, man. She deadlifted 200 on her opener, missed 213 on her second attempt on grip. It just kind of like slipped out of her hands around about the knee. And then whatever she did in the back room to get herself going, she was able to pull 213 on her third attempt, which actually put her from fourth into third. So Hannah was currently in third at that point, and that 213 deadlift put Aislinn into third. So yeah, really clutch lifting from Aislinn. Walked away with the squat and deadlift records in the 76 class and third place overall for a nice payday for her.
Yeah, she killed it. I mean, I don't really have much more to add than that. Um, yeah, the bench was a bit of a funny one, missing the second and then nailing it on the third. Deadlift, it's always hard to miss. Like I said this earlier about Yanni Marcellus. When you miss a lift on grip, it's very hard to come back from that. Especially if you tear a callus or whatever it might be. But it was very clear when Aislinn missed, she didn't grind it. She like got stuck for a second and just gave up on it. And as soon as she walked off, she was pointing at her hands and she just knew that it was not quite right. So she hadn't torn a callus or anything. Um, of course, the finish with the Australian record is great. And what you pointed out earlier, I didn't actually realize that she is 5 kilos below the Australian record in the weight class up, which belongs to, who we know, Yanni Zhao, which is a very high standard record as well. So um, that's just awesome. And I think she also has the squat record in the 69s, Aislinn, right? At 186.
She does, yeah.
So squat record across two weight classes. She's a good squatter.
And a deadlift record. And the deadlift record isn't too far away from the 84s either, just 12 kilos away. So really good lifter. And, Aislinn's someone who's super new to the sport. I think she's only 3 years in and adding a lot to her total each time. What was her total, JP? Can you just remind me? 520 something?
527 maybe?
No, that was what Brittany did. I think Aislinn did a little less.
513 and a half, sorry.
Yeah, so 513 and a half, which I believe was like plus 30-ish, plus 35, something like that. Sorry, we should have
On her
fact
best
checked
total?
beforehand. Yeah, on her best total.
Yeah, best total was 476. So yeah, about 30ish, just shy of 30 kilos.
Yeah. So awesome lifting from Aislinn, and well done to get onto the podium. And in second place, last year's SBD Cup winner, Brittany Romas, had a near 9 for 9 day, the closest you could possibly get to a 9 for 9 day in my eyes. 3 for 3 on squat with 197.5 for a 7.5 kilo PB. I mentioned on the stream, shows a lot of humility to not go for a round number like 200 and pull back and do 197.5. Kevin Lai did this on his squat. He did 297.5. I think it takes a lot of maturity and humility to make that choice. It ended up being the right one in both instances, with them both achieving 3 for 3 and achieving, big totals and total records. So well done to Brittany there. She was also able to chip the bench press record of 118.5, which was previously set by Hannah a minute before. I think that was actually quite a conservative call. I remember that one moving really, really well. Like I feel like she probably had like another 3 to 5 kilos, which is cool. Hopefully she
I think
can
she's done
collect.
over 120 in the gym. Yeah.
She has. She did 120 at her last meet. Obviously it was a local, so it isn't the record, but yeah, I think a little bit of room there on Brittany's bench too, and with the squat too. The 197 it moved great. She's a very slow mover, so her opener looks hard, her second looks hard, her third looks hard, but there always seems to be a little bit more in the tank, and we'll see if she ever needs to kind of rev the engine at full capacity for a squat, and we'll see what that actually looks like. And then going into deadlifts, Brittany was the hot favorite in the 76, having picked up 6 for 6. Being the only one of the 76 girls to be 6 for 6 at that point. Opening deadlift was great. Jumped to 202.5 and locked it out, but unfortunately got 2 red lights for soft shoulders, which looking back, I think was the right call. And they decided to go up anyway, and they had it in at 212.5 is what they had the number put in at. They did a really late change down to 211. Which ended up being, I think, the right call. That was probably her hardest lift of the day, and gave her that 527 total, which meant that none of the other girls deadlifting after her could push her off her position, and that locked in her second place overall finish.
It was a little bit surprising to see her jump up from that second attempt, because I think she only needed to do her second attempt. Like I think 202.5, which was her second attempt deadlift. I think if she'd gotten that, she would have finished second anyway.
Yeah, I think in that instance it left the door open for Aislinn. I think Aislinn would have needed like around 218 to push her off. I'm surprised they went as high as 211. I can certainly see why they went up. Like maybe 207.5 would have just pushed Aislinn a little bit too far. 211 seemed unnecessarily much, but in hindsight, it was a made lift, and you can't argue with that.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, you might be right actually on that about needing to push Aislinn a little bit further, which is why Aislinn kept it, conservative by repeating her second. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like you said, basically a 9 out of 9 day, a moral 9 out of 9 day in my opinion. Perfect attempt selection across the board. I mean, on the bench could have probably squeezed out more, but she took the record, so of course you're going to bank the record when you can. Um, Finished first last year, second place this year. I mean, she's just a weapon. Two-time lifter, two-time competitor at Worlds. Brittany Romus is a very good lifter.
Yeah, one of the only two returning podium from last year, and they were both able to get back on the podium, which is super cool. So we'll see if Kana and Brittany can get back on the podium again next year.
I just want to finish on one thing. It's also worth noting that Izzy that lifted in the 84s, and she didn't make weight, obviously, and I think she only weighed in at 70. She ended up weighing at 78.9, but obviously that's a bit inflated because she started eating and stuff a couple of hours before lifting. Of course, it would have been different if you had to force yourself to make weight. One, because you had to fight to get down there. Two, because you're in a different competition, your numbers are all different and stuff. But she finished with 527.5 on her total, half a kilo more than Britt Romus. And so if she'd made weight and lifted the same numbers, which you're not going to lift the same numbers, but if she had, she would have come second. Just saying, Izzy could have come second.
Really, really good point, and especially important considering the missed 11 kilo jump on squat.
Yeah, maybe she
The
would have been safer on squats and only squatted 205.
Exactly.
And then,
Well, yeah, because so Aislinn did 205.5. Maybe Izzy does 206 or 205.5 or something, and Aislinn does 206. Yeah, it might have completely shaken up the day completely. All right, and that brings us to the final lifter to talk about from the SBD Australia Cup 2025, which was one of the most impressive performances, actually maybe the most impressive performance I've ever personally witnessed. I feel like I ran out of superlatives on the commentary to talk about how phenomenal she was. But your 2025 SBD Australia Cup champion was Abby Wallace.
yeah, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the most impressive powerlifting performance that I've ever witnessed in person. And I've witnessed a lot of powerlifting. Breaking every record. Her squat opener was a record. Her bench opener was a record. Her second attempt deadlift was a record. She scored 115%, the most GL points of all time. Yeah, there's not enough nice words to use about Abby Wallace. Also a nice person, very very respectful, very friendly. Just an all round good human being, and to see her put up with such a performance like that was just phenomenal.
Yeah, she put 64.5 kilos on the Australian record total in that weight class, which you said monopoly money about Tony's squat before, but like that is real monopoly money. Like that much on a total record is crazy. We've never seen that much at an SBD Cup or even like a Sheffield. Like I think the biggest ever winning percentage at Sheffield was like 109. It is just mind blowing, to be honest. Like benching 115 at 57 is crazy. Yeah, I really have no other words.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the open powerlifting now, out of curiosity, and across all attested Australian lifters, raw and wraps, all classes, all genders, all federations, she's number one.
It's not
That's
surprising.
insane.
It's not
That's
surprising.
insane.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. We'll go through her day. 187.0 squat, which was 21 kilos above the record before the start of the day. She benched 115 on her second attempt and missed 120. I will say the 120 wasn't super close, like maybe 117.5 or something around there would have been a go. But that was, I believe, 10 kilos above the bench press record before the day. And then she deadlifted 193 on her second attempt, which was chipping Kirsty Lay's 192.5 from Nationals last year. So finished the day with squat record, bench record, total record, deadlift record, first place overall, every record, best best GL ever in Australia. I think the 5th best ever 57 kilo total in the IPF history. I believe the 2nd best bench press. Can you double check that? Can you look at bench 57 open IPF?
In the meantime, yeah, like you said, not enough superlatives to describe Abby Wallace. Just a flawless performance. I mean, I spoke to her afterwards. You might have seen the interview. So to all the listeners, if you haven't, go check out the live stream. Towards the end of the live stream, I interview her briefly. Well, I mean, not so briefly. Like we were able to have a bit of a chat and share a little bit about her performance and what her plans are in the future. And she kind of does share that she's not confident if she wants to stay down in this weight class just because it's so demanding to be so lean. And it can be very intrusive, obviously, into your personal life. But much like Kevin Lai found a home in the 93s, I mean, when you put up a performance like that, maybe it is worthwhile milking for a year or two before you do kind of eventually have to take care of yourself in that way. But I mean, of course, it's a very personal opinion. So whatever is best for her is best for us. But she could definitely do some damage at an IPF Worlds. She didn't make it clear that she would want to go to an IPF Worlds unless she felt confident that she could get on the podium. Um, but I mean, I would love to see her go and represent Australia for sure. Definitely not representing Canada though.
I think, is she Canadian? Is she?
Yeah.
I thought she was American. That makes sense why she's so nice.
Yeah, exactly right. Not a jerk. No offense to any Americans listening.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that she did 495 at 57, which is 25 kilos away from the open world record total. So the total that you need to achieve to get a Sheffield invite is a minimum of 95% of the total record, which would be 494. So her 495 is actually above the minimum requirement for Sheffield. So for me, like, if I was looking at this, I would say, like, I would love to see her have a crack at doing nationals at 57, going to worlds and seeing if she can potentially make it to Sheffield, because that could be a potentially like one in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm not sure if something she could do as a 64. I mean, maybe she could just go back up to 63 and just get way stronger and do it at 63 anyway. Like, that's totally possible. But yeah, I think where she's at and the level that she's at, and it's only her first comp at 57. She barely had any time to train at weight. Like, give her a few blocks and a good runway into nationals and then a good runway into worlds, and who knows what she'll be capable of by then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to add. I would love to see her get to a Sheffield. I'd love to see her compete at Worlds, but when you've got someone who's just such a talent, like she's only been lifting for a few years, I think, in powerlifting specifically, you do have to, take care and guide them well. And I know that Jack's doing a good job with her. So, yeah, congratulations, I suppose, to end our discussion on the women's section. Yeah, I mean, we both called it prior that she was a clear favorite, and that wasn't very surprising. And she executed perfectly. And 8 out of 9 day, best IPF points in history. Can't complain with that in Australian history.
Yeah, I think it will now be impossible to win SBD Australia Cup at 57. I think she just set the bar so high that, like, next year, like, no one will compete at 57 unless it's her and she just breaks her own record again. Yeah, she just elevated it so high. We're also worth noting, if she competed in the 76 class, she would have come 4th.
Yeah, that's insane. If she put on 20 kilos.
So, like, she weighed in at 57. If you take her total into the 76 class,
Yeah,
it would have been exactly 100 points, which if you take her out of the top 4, she then slots in at 4th place, which is just incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, if she stood on those scales at the start of the day holding a 20-kilo dumbbell in one hand, she still almost would have gotten the podium.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, JP, thanks for joining me. Thank you again for all your time over the weekend. And yeah, you did such a good job, like, setting the stage for these lifters and, providing the context around them before they came out on the platform and getting the crowd aware of everything that was going on. And yeah, we are really thankful that you were able to join us for the preview show, for the day itself, and now for this. So yeah, thanks.
I appreciate it, Alex. It was good to be part of. I would love to be back next year. I'll keep it free on my calendar.
Beautiful. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week with a more normal podcast. Ciao.
Ciao.